Awesome. So today we have Dr. Andy Harnsberger with us. He's a soloist, composer, educator. He pretty much does everything and is taught and performed all around the world. He's currently the Associate Professor of Music and Percussion Coordinator at Lee University. That's in Cleveland, Tennessee. He has several CDs. One a couple years old now is Phoenix. It has some of my favorite pieces by him, including Words Unspoken and Forever in Blue. And his new album, Unbreakable, just hit the, I guess, virtual streets recently, and it's super high octane, all marimba solos with trio backing, and I believe it's all the pieces that you played at your PASIC Showcase concert in 2019, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which was, talk about high octane. That was that was awesome. Definitely the highlight of PASIC, and I don't know if you're gonna like that I mentioned this, but one of my favorite parts of the whole thing was the very last piece. It was like so energetic and high octane that we needed something to literally break that tension, and something did break, and it was your mallet, and it shot across the stage, and I was just like, yeah, like I remember standing up and being like, this is like a death metal concert. It was super hip. I looked at my students, they were like, what? And you just kept shredding, dude. It was like, it was super cool, and I'll definitely remember that whole concert. So anyway, Andy, I'm
Oh,
so
thanks,
glad you're
man.
here. It's a pleasure to have
Thanks.
you. And did I miss anything? Is there anything you want to tell them that I missed?
No, no.
Oh man, I was super excited. So cool. Do you mind if we just dive into some questions?
Sure, go ahead.
Cool. So, your article hangs on my door. It's called "The Truth About Practice and Performance," and my undergraduates, they have to read that article. They do when they first come in. I know it was written a while ago. I think 2012 or 2011. But do you still follow these rules? Is this still something that you teach, or have things changed for you over time? I'm just curious to see.
I think a lot of what I wrote there is still holds true today. Obviously, I feel like rule number one. Well, let me talk about the truths for a second. The article came about from um, a series of truths about practice that I was writing down for my students, and I wanted to come up with like 5 or 10 truths that they could always fall back on, and it ended up being 50. So every time I got to 5 or got to 7, I would think of something else, and I would get to 15 and think of something else, and I added them all up, and I put 50 truths about practicing. And then so a lot of them overlap, and so I took those 50 truths and I combined them into the article that I wrote for PAS, for percussive notes. But the first truth that I came up with is you have to be motivated. And if you're not motivated, you have to be disciplined. So this is what we do. And I a lot of people have jobs that they go to, and they're not always motivated to go, but they're disciplined, and they go to work because they have to go to work. And I feel like this is what we do, and this is who we are. And you're not always going to be motivated to go into the practice room. When you're not motivated, you have to be disciplined.
Yeah.
And that's truth number one. And a lot of those truths I still follow today. The other ones are technique is key. Technique is the foundation upon which we build music. And if you're having to think about technique, you can't think about music. So your technique has to be so good that you don't have to think about it. So you mentioned just a second ago in the intro, Words Unspoken. If you can't play a one-handed roll, don't play Words Unspoken.
Yes.
Because it's the first bar, and you're gonna have to think too much about the one-handed roll rather than thinking about how you set up the whole piece and the musicality that goes along with that. So yes, I still believe in those
Awesome.
truths. And I have a packet that I give all of my new students, and it's in the packet. The article is in the packet.
Yeah, good. Yeah, it's great. I like them, and I like, I think you label 4 in the article, the 2 you mentioned, and then like have something to say about your playing, which I really feel like sometimes if we focus a lot on the technique, which we should, it's hard sometimes to teach like how to bring that out. But And so I like that you talk about, expressing yourself, and then conceive, believe, and achieve. I think that was, yeah. Anyway, so it's required reading, and it's something that my students really afterwards like, oh yeah, this is good. And also, it's nice to have someone else say the same kind of things. Sometimes I think my students get tired of hearing my voice, which is fine.
I
So
think
it's
that's true in every studio. Doesn't matter who you are or what you've done in your life. Your students still ignore my students still ignore me like yours ignore you, and
yeah,
you get somebody else to come in and say the exact same thing that you've been saying for weeks, and all of a sudden it resonates with them
yeah,
because it's either said in a different way or somebody else is saying it. And like you said, my voice can get ignored by my students, just like I think it's true in every studio.
for sure. Okay, well, moving forward, as far as daily practicing is concerned, do you have a daily routine that you do no matter what's going on, or is everything kind of determined about what's coming up in your schedule?
I talk to my students a lot about establishing a daily routine and making sure that they do that on a daily basis. And that's, I think that's really huge when you're a student, because there might be days that you can't get to the instrument, or even like, say last March when everybody was sent home, there were weeks where the students couldn't get to the instrument. But if they have done their daily routine for a long time, when they come back into the practice room, it's kind of easier to get back into the swing of things because you know what you're supposed to sound like because
Hmm.
you've done your daily routine. And not only that, you know what it feels like to sound good. For me, because my schedule is so kind of uh, just weird, honestly. Just uh, there's no set time to practice a lot of times.
Sure.
For me, um, I will do the daily routine as a sort of a warm up, but then my practice sessions all are centered around what's coming up.
Sure.
Um, and so uh, last December, I had a recording session with the Greenhouse Productions people, and my practice sessions were totally geared around practicing in chunks, not
Yeah.
practicing a piece, but learning how to practice 2 or 3 bars at a time, and then knowing how to take the next 4 bars and put with those 3 bars.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
the practice sessions were a lot different for me because I'm very much a live player. I am about the total concept, the overall performance. I've never been someone that focuses so much on making sure everything is perfect in these 2 bars.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's the overall effect of the live performance. But then when you're doing, when you're recording Phoenix with John Parks, it's totally different. Whereas you've got, in that situation, you've got to hit every note exactly perfect.
Yes. Yes.
And there's no wrong notes on that CD, by the way. Thank you,
Oh,
John.
I don't think he'd allow it. So,
Yeah, no, he definitely didn't. And um, so the next thing that I have coming up is another recording session, but it's not for a few months away. So that's what I'm going to be gearing everything towards is the same kind of practicing, just because there's no live performances right now.
yeah.
But I want to mention this, that my practices are all structured, and this is something that I talk about with my students. Um, in the first lesson of this semester, we talked about think about what your goals are,
Mm.
and then I want you to plan out every week. I want you to know what you're doing every week, and then beyond that, know what you have to do every day to make those weekly lessons successful.
Okay.
And so we use the Liquid Drum Planning Journal,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and it's beautiful for this kind of planning and organization. And if you're not organized, you know, let's say on Tuesday you get to practice marimba,
Mm.
but then you don't get to practice those pieces again until Friday. How do you know what you did on Tuesday? How do you
Yeah.
remember specifically what you did unless you wrote it down, unless you took time to organize your practice? And I think it's really important to have that kind of planner. and
Sure.
have everything organized before you go into a practice room and just mindlessly go through your exercises or your try to cram notes or whatever.
Sure. So with your students, you're saying like you have them plan out like a month in advance or like a week in advance down to the
I'm
day,
having them
or
I'm having them plan out what's so for example, several of them have recitals this semester. And so
Mhm.
the goal is the recital hearing, which is here at Lee is 3 weeks before the recital.
Gotcha.
And for grad students, they don't have a recital hearing, but so your goal is to have your rep learned on that specific date, for
Gotcha.
example. And then what do you have to do? What steps do you have to take to make sure everything is ready for that date?
Mm.
If you it's the same thing that I did for my PASIC performance the concert. I got the music about 3 months ahead of time, and so there was not a whole lot of time to learn
Yeah.
all of those notes. If I wasn't organized and didn't know what I had to do every single day, I would just go into the practice room and start from the beginning
Ah,
and try to go slow and work my way to the end and then try to bump up the speed. But looking back in the journal, I can look at that. Okay, this section, the last time I played it, I had it at 88 beats per minute. Um, I've got to get it up to 100 today
mm.
because I'm moving forward. We've got to move forward. There's not a whole lot of time.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that kind of organization makes you better in the practice room and knowing
Yeah.
what you have to do. And your practice sessions are not, oftentimes you've probably been there where you're playing the same music and you're just kind of going through the motions and you're not thinking about it as much and it's kind of mind numbing.
Yeah.
You're just kind of aimlessly wandering through your practice session. Whereas if you know exactly what task you've got to tackle, exactly what bars are the problem areas, uh, for me, it was okay. Um, these exact bars I need to work on, and I'm not going to do anything else because I know that these are the problem areas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, that's all right. That's pretty much it.
No, I got you. That's it seems like no matter how many books I've read or talked to people, journaling seems to be something that they all come back to in some form. And I'm curious, is this something that you've always done? Have you always been like meticulous about this sort of thing, or is there a moment in time where you're like, okay, it's time to get my blank together? Like that sort
Yeah,
of thing.
no. As a matter of fact, when I was in school at VCU, um, I would go into the practice room and I would just basically perform the pieces that I knew. Let's say I would learn a new piece.
Hmm.
Here's a good example. I love the piece Footpath by Dave Samuels.
Okay.
And I learned that when I was at VCU. And it was so fun to play that if I had 30 minutes, it's a 5-minute piece, I would play it 6 times. And
Nice.
that's what I would do. And my teacher always told me, you need to slow down and you need to pay attention to what you're doing. You need to practice slowly because you're developing bad habits, you're ingraining mistakes. And I always just thought, this old man is crazy. I'm killing this piece.
Yeah.
And
That's
then
awesome.
one day I was in a competition and I was playing Footpath and something happened where I just blanked.
Hmm.
And I ended up not even being able to finish the piece. I had to just stop and I just couldn't continue.
Oh
Um,
man.
and so obviously I didn't win that competition, but I learned a really valuable lesson, and that was, man, my teacher was right. Like
Hmm.
when I got on stage, I got nervous, and all of a sudden it wasn't like being in the practice room anymore. And so from then on, really, that's when, and this was a long time ago. So uh, this was 1993. So I was still a student, or I had just finished my master's when this happened.
Got you.
And
Okay.
this, before I went to Eastman. And, um, but I learned a really valuable lesson. And that was no matter what, even after you know the piece, you have to practice slowly and you have to take it so slow that you can think about all the details. And I think that's one of the big things that students don't do is
Mm.
they learn their music and then they just perform it, and they perform it in the practice room instead of practicing it slow so that you can think about where you're hitting on the bar, the musical gesture,
Yeah.
body positioning, the technique, elbow shifts, where you need to be on the instrument, all of that stuff needs to be, you need to be thinking about that all the time. And if you're not thinking about it, when you go to perform it in a live situation, you could be standing behind the instrument and not even know what you're supposed to play.
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
Because the mental preparation that needs to happen when you're practicing it slow also needs to be there, so that when something does happen on stage, you know where you are and you do know the music, and it's, you remember where you're supposed to be. Like, I know where I'm supposed to be standing at any point when I'm playing whatever piece that I'm playing. I know that when I play Mexican dances, my belly button is right between the E and the F. I know that that's where I need to stand. And if I'm not standing there when I start, I'm going to miss the left hand.
Yeah.
But I only know that because of all the slow practice and just paying attention to all of the little details. And that's the way I am with every piece. And that's what I try to get my students to do. Now, everybody's faced with time constraints, especially students. And I am as well, but we still have to do the slow preparation. We still have to go through the work.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you have a set, like, I first off, I totally agree. Slow practice is key. That's something I have been pounding on the door with my students forever. And, sometimes they jump in, they're like, yeah, we'll do slow practice. And sometimes on their fourth year and they're like, I think I'll try that slow practice, but, when there were senior recitals coming, they'll actually do it. But do you have like a golden rule with that or anything, like where it's like, okay, 4 times perfect slow at this tempo, then you bump it 2 clicks? Or is it more of just like when it feels right, move forward, or when you can execute these certain things, move forward?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I mean, you can kind of do the penny game, or the
Yeah.
10 stages of torture is what I call it.
Oh, I did Skittles, and that's probably where I got the belly.
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, you can definitely set goals like that. Okay, I'm gonna practice this passage until I get it 10 times perfectly. I personally, it's more of a comfort level with me. How do I feel about it? Do I feel like I can move it up? But I mean, even if I have a recital coming up in 2 weeks, I'm not playing at 100%. I might do a run through of every piece once a day, maybe twice a day.
Okay. Yeah.
But I would say 80% of my practicing is still slow, because
Wow, okay.
once you get on for me anyway, when I get on stage, it's more of a mental game with me. I know that I can play the pieces, and my technique is there because I've done all of that work. But I want to be able to be sure that mentally I'm able to focus and be clear about what I'm trying to convey in the music to the audience.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I think the more I've talked to the upper echelon players like that, they talk about leading up to the concert, they pull back the reins and focus on the mental. And I know it's good for people to hear that every now and then, because you're like, oh, I have 2 weeks, I need to shred this like 7 times a day, and then all of a sudden you get out there and like a bar is moved over, or something strange happens and you're like screwed.
Yeah.
So I think the mental thing is key. Do you think moving forward, are there other tricks and stuff that we should incorporate as teachers, like to fight the mental game, or do you think it's really about that slow drilling?
I don't know if you subscribe to the Bulletproof Musician, but bulletproofmusician.com. I mean, they talk a lot about the mental game.
Oh, I haven't heard about that.
Yeah, it's really, really great.
Okay.
And I get their newsletter or whatever, the email blasts all the time, and there's always something in there about the mental game.
Okay.
And it's
I'll write that down.
I think that that's one of the aspects that students especially do not take into account.
Sure.
Anything can happen on stage, and everything happens on stage. Like you mentioned, the basic thing where my mallet breaks.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It's like, what do you do?
Yeah.
I didn't practice that. I didn't practice the mallet breaking, what
Yeah.
am I supposed to do if that happens? Well, you just got to keep it together and, fly by the seat of your pants for a
Yeah.
minute until you figure it out, and then finish the concert with 3 mallets instead of 4,
Yeah. Super
you
hip.
know?
Yeah.
Um, but things like that always happen. I have had, you know, going into concerts, nothing can happen. Nothing. I am playing this stuff so well, nothing can possibly happen. And then get to the concert and your mallet gets stuck under the accidental,
Oh yeah.
or something crazy, or the light just looks different and I'm seeing shadows on the instrument,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
and so you just have to be so strong mentally that nothing like that can bother you.
Hmm.
And
I like that.
I think the only way to do that is to be so super focused in your practicing, doing that slow work, that you're training you're really training yourself that literally whatever happens, I can handle it.
Yeah.
I've got to be able to adjust and handle it.
Hmm.
And I think that when you are in the practice room and you're just running things, people have said, I just want to run this so much that when I get on the stage, I just want to be in the zone. I just want to be on autopilot.
Sure.
That is the last place you want to be.
Yeah.
You don't want to be on autopilot, because what if something happens? Then you are in no position to fix it.
Yeah. Exactly.
You've got,
Yeah.
that's why it's so draining to be in the practice room for 4 hours. It's so draining to give a full recital because you're thinking the whole time.
Hmm.
That's what is draining. You're draining your brain. So after the recital, that's what's tired for me. It's not my hands. I can go forever.
Sure. Yeah.
My brain, I'm mentally worn out because that's what's tasking,
Hmm.
you know.
Absolutely. That's good to hear, especially, you've been doing this a long time and you say like, I've worked on the hands, like this is not the problem. It's like when I walk off, I'm still, even though I've been playing this piece for a long time, mentally in the game the whole time. And that's hard. Like even having a conversation for like 60 minutes, like physically in it is hard, So
Right.
like that's great to hear. So speaking about like the physical and mental stuff, you talk about executing notes and rhythms and really focusing on the practicing aspect. But is there anything else that you do daily or to prepare for performances, like working out or eating or sleeping regimens, things like that?
Well, I think people that know me know that I'm into fitness and into nutrition. And so leading up to a concert, really, none of that really changes. I still go to the gym, but maybe I don't push myself as hard. I try to maybe uh, take it a little bit easier so that I don't risk an injury or something like that.
Sure.
But I don't change any of that. I don't stop going, and I still I always advocate that fitness is really important, and one of the biggest things uh, that helps with is increasing blood flow. And the reason that's important is because the more blood flow you have to your brain, the more oxygen you get into your brain, which means the more concentration you have.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's really important. And along with that is just drinking a bunch of water.
I saw that
Here
jug.
I've got
Yeah.
my gallon of water, and so it started full, and we're only at 11:30, and I'm already down to here. So
All right.
that's another big contributor. You want to be hydrated, so that your muscles can function well when you're trying to perform.
Hmm.
If a lot of people, it's like, I'm going to drink some coffee and I'll be fine.
Yeah.
That's really not what you need to be doing. Yes, I agree that caffeine is a huge part of my life. I'm not going to deny that. But also, so is this. So is the water. The water intake really helps. The caffeine is a mental stimulant, and that definitely helps with performance. I do take caffeine before I perform.
Okay.
Again, for the mental clarity that you find that you can have with that on stage.
Awesome. Okay.
Um, but I also am drinking a lot of water. I even have water bottles on stage with me when I'm performing. I don't want to be in a position where I can't even breathe because my mouth is too dry.
Sure.
I hate that feeling. So I always, and I like to talk to the audience too
Mhm.
before I play and between pieces. So I like to have a water bottle on stage to stay hydrated and make it easier to speak to the audience.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Well, speaking of your workout routine, I know that you do that, and can you talk specifically about working out for percussionists? Is there anything that we need to try to avoid, or maybe even some exercises or lifting exercises or cardio that we should be doing to kind of strengthen specifically for snare drum, marimba, that sort of thing?
I think the biggest thing is stretching, honestly. Um, I wrote that article several years ago, Stretching for Pain-Free Performance. And I
Hmm.
think that was in the 2006 issue of Percussive Notes.
Okay.
Um, but it's really important to avoid injury and to stretch before we play so that we can avoid injury. We're all looking for longevity, and I've gone through periods of time where I've had hand issues and carpal tunnel problems and things like that. My hand issues came from basically overuse and not taking care of myself during one specific period of time, and that was about an 8-month period in 2005, 2006, where I did 80 marimba concerts, and
Oh my gosh.
there was sometimes honestly not enough time to go in and set the marimba up and stretch and warm up really well. So it was like get in, set the marimba up, play the concert, break it down, move to the next
Wow.
thing, and so that caused some problems for me physically, mentally too. I was burned out,
Sure.
and so it caused me to take a good hiatus from playing, about 4 years, where I
Hmm.
didn't play any concerts. But it was also to rehabilitate my hands and to figure out um, a different approach to playing that would increase my longevity.
Hmm.
So now I'm when I started playing again after that and working on that, everything was much more relaxed. And I think that hand issues, specifically, a lot of percussionists these days are aware of hand problems,
Hmm.
whereas when I was going through high school and college, I didn't know why my hands were hurting.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
and it wasn't as prominent maybe back then, but now we're all aware and we try to do try to take care of ourselves. But one of the things that we don't do is stretch before we play. And um, another common issue is, students will say, well, I've got hand problems. My hands are hurting because I'm doing this. Well, a lot of people attribute hand issues to playing with Stevens grip, for example.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's not that you're playing with Stevens grip, it's that you're playing incorrectly with
Yeah.
Stevens grip.
Sure.
I play with Stevens, and you
Exactly.
know, uh, there's you just have to take care of yourself, and a lot of the problems that students have is from doing things incorrectly.
Hmm.
Either playing into the drum, not letting the drum help with the rebound,
Sure.
and things like that, and being very stiff and um, not stretching before you play, not warming up before you play.
Hmm.
I've got hand problems. Well, did you warm up? No, I just came in and started playing. It's
Yeah.
um, the two things go hand in hand. So uh, I think that everybody needs to do something physically every day. Going back to your workout questions,
Yeah. Sure.
whether it's walking, running. I'm not into running. Some people are really into running. Whatever, but I think there needs to be some kind of physical activity, and I also think that people need to drink more water. So those are my two big things.
Okay. I mean, they definitely can't hurt you, so that
Right.
sounds, no, that's great. Especially, I just recently over the last month or so, well, basically since the pandemic started, I've been thinking personally about things that I want to do and things that I need to fix. And one of them is, a lack of exercise and working out. Because it's very easy to be like, I'm too busy. I'm going to eat McDonald's and watch TV.
Yeah, right.
And so the last month or two, I've been getting back into working out and like just a lot of cardio stuff and some weights, but I'm kind of nervous about that because I'm afraid like one wrong pull or like if my form's not set that I could like do something bad here. But I've noticed in the last month or two, just my energy level and my excitement for practicing has gone back up. And I was like, what
Great.
is it? It's, I mean, definitely. And I was like, oh, it's the, getting up in the morning and having time for me and walking and, that sort of thing. So,
Yeah, just exactly. Create some me time. Focus on yourself, and uh, a lot of people don't do that.
hmm,
And going back to the lifting weights, just like in practicing, uh, when you're lifting weights, technique is key.
hmm,
So yeah, you want to make sure your technique is right before you do anything to hurt yourself.
yeah. Do you recommend people like working with somebody if they're going to do some weights and stuff like that?
Yeah,
Or
absolutely. Get with somebody that's experienced, somebody that's knowledgeable, that can show you correct form, technique. If you can't afford a personal trainer, then look up some things on YouTube.
for sure.
There's a ton of good information out there. There's a lot of bad information, as we all know, but you can
Sure.
find some really good things to show you some good workout tips.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I just had one more question, then I can open it up to you if you wanted to talk about anything. But if you're comfortable with sharing a little bit about yourself, I was curious if you could talk a little bit about how you balance your home life and your work life. And specifically, I know over the last couple of years you've had a battle with some health issues and things. Could you talk a little bit about working through all of that and how you manage doing that and practicing and teaching your job? Basically, how you balance everything. I mean, some people would say it's straight up just a cup of coffee, but I'm doubtful that that's exactly what you did. So, um,
um, wow. So
it's also okay if you don't want to talk about it. That's totally fine.
no, it's fine. I'll just air it all out there so everybody can hear.
I can also
um,
delete it. It's totally cool.
okay. So in 2015 started with kind of my dad died in 2015 in June, and then my wife left me in August. Then in November of 2015, I found out that I had skin cancer. I don't know if you can see this scar,
Oh, okay. Wow.
but back there. So that year was rough,
That's a lot.
and then moving into 2016, um, just continuing with that, and being a single full-time dad, um, and trying to still do the things that I do, being a teacher. um, my daughter was at the time was only 4 in 2015. um, so finding daycare
Hmm.
and having to deal with that, and then adjusting my schedule completely so that I could be a full-time dad.
Yeah.
I didn't have any help, and finding babysitters to watch her when I would have a performance out of town, and then realizing that all of that was going to change. I wasn't going to be able to do 30 concerts a year anymore, or things like that. I was going to have to be more selective, the places that I wanted to play, and things like that.
Yeah.
Then in 2017, and then in 2016, I did that Phoenix CD, and with John Parks. And then um, 2017, I found out that I had cancer again,
Hmm.
and not skin cancer, but actually breast cancer.
Oh, wow.
And then, like, the realization that this was not just um, something that could be removed. Like, this was something that I'm gonna have to fight for. This is going to be something that's going to change me.
Hmm.
um, the the chemo about killed me, and so after about a year and a half on that, I realized a lot of truths about, first of all, the drugs and the pharmaceutical industry, and uh, also about myself. I had to be somebody. I had to be somebody that was going to be around for my daughter, and so
Yeah.
basically, that's where the piece "Unbreakable" came from.
Hmm.
Um, when I was thinking about that piece, I was writing for myself, but also for my dad, who battled Parkinson's for 15 years before he passed.
Wow.
And so that was, I knew that I, no matter what, that I was going to win. I was going to win the battle, but I had to figure out a way to do it. And it all came down to um, basically diet and nutrition and exercise. And
Yeah.
so I gave up on the drugs and focused totally on that. And then at the same time being awarded a showcase concert at PASIC, it was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to practice for this? I can't even, I had lost about 45 pounds
Oh wow.
and was not really, obviously looked terrible and was not really healthy. And then that was when I was taking the chemo. And then
Hmm.
uh, when I started uh, without the drugs and moving forward on my own, I was able to put some weight back on. And then all of my checkups and everything started coming out more positive than even when I was taking the drugs.
Oh wow. Great.
So the doctors were very upset with me that I stopped the regimen. But when my blood levels started coming back cleaner, they obviously they were happy for me, but they couldn't understand why it was happening. And
Hmm.
um, so, I mean, when I talk to people about that part of my life, um, it's sorry, I get
No.
emotional because it was all geared around being a good dad and being there for my daughter.
Hmm.
And I didn't ever want her to know that I had cancer because I didn't ever want her to worry about me and freak out. Um, so I just, anybody that's going through anything, I just want to, just the message of don't give up and, you know, never lose hope. Um, be unbreakable, be unbreakable person. Just always be stronger than anything else
Hmm.
that you're battling, and don't give up. And just one day after another, one day at a time, and just even my dad's last days, he never gave up. He always battled it, but eventually it was just too much for him.
Yeah.
And sorry, I'm kind of rambling. There was no
No, you're
real
okay.
no
That's
real direction to that at all. But I think that uh, PASIC concert was I've played at PASIC before and I've done presentations and things like that and
yeah.
panels, but that showcase concert was and probably will be the most important, the most special performance of my career, um, just because of everything that I had going on, and was still able to go out and do it and get a lot of really positive feedback about the performance and to share that concert with people that are special to me and all of the people that came like you and all the people who support me. It was really a very moving experience for me. And then just a few months after that concert, to find out that I was cancer free was um, just that was an amazing year. So for a lot of
Yeah.
people, 2020 sucked, but for me, it was like, wow, I'm cancer free, y'all.
Yeah.
And to me, it was in a lot of ways, it was a great year.
Yeah. I mean, I'm blown away by what you just said. it will definitely bring more meaning to now when I listen to your CD, and having saw the concert live, but also getting to hear Unbreakable. You were unbreakable, like for real. Like that's congratulations to you, and your struggles and pushing through for your family. I mean, without talking more and getting more emotional, like trying not to do that, but it's incredible. I know that took a lot for you to say, and yeah, I think sometimes we get so caught up with it's really important to practice and do this and do this and do this, but also having an ultimate goal that you were faced with, which was I'm not going to give up, I'm not going to stop, and then all of a sudden it all just kind of opens up. And the showcase concert was incredible. You're cancer free, and you're still doing everything that you've always set out to do. So congratulations for that.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, for sure. No, thank you for sharing. That's wow. I'm like, no, don't do it. You know? Well, I honestly don't know of anything else to ask at this point. Is there anything that you would like to share, or